The hailstorm fell like the sky itself was breaking apart, each icy stone smashing against the ground with violent force, and through that chaos, a luxury black SUV crawled forward, wipers struggling to keep the world visible. Inside sat Daniel Reeves, a single father and one of the most respected CEOs in the state, yet the loneliness in his eyes made him look like a man carrying storms far colder than the one raging outside. And as he drove home to his little son after a long day of boardroom battles and memories of his late wife clawing at his chest, something caught his attention, something so small he almost missed it. A tiny girl curled beneath a rusted bus stop bench, arms wrapped around her shaking body, hair plastered to her face, the hailstones bouncing off her fragile frame as if trying to break her. Daniel slammed the brakes, his heartbeat exploding with fear and instinct, and without thinking, he jumped out into the storm, letting the hailstones batter his skin while he raced toward her, shouting, "Hey! Don't move, I'm coming." But she didn't seem to hear him, only rocking back and forth whispering something he couldn't understand. When he reached her, he knelt and pulled off his coat, wrapping it around her tiny form, and as he lifted her trembling body into his arms, her eyes fluttered open, huge, terrified, and filled with a sadness that sliced through his heart like lightning, and in a tiny broken voice she whispered, "My mom used to tell me about you," making Daniel freeze mid-step, because he didn't know this child, didn't know her mother, didn't know why she spoke his name as though fate had written it into her heart. Confused and shaken, he rushed her into the SUV, turning the heater full blast, rubbing her hands to warm her, asking gently, "Sweetheart, what's your name?" And she answered barely aloud, "Leela," before adding again, staring at him with haunting sincerity, "My mom said you'd help me someday." And Daniel felt his breath catch because he had heard many things in his life. Compliments, praise, promises, but nothing had ever hit him as deeply as a mother telling her daughter to look for him in moments of fear. As the storm intensified outside, he drove her straight to the nearest emergency clinic, holding her hand as doctors checked her, refusing to leave her side, unable to explain the fierce protectiveness he felt for a child he had just met. And when she woke from mild hypothermia treatment, she reached for him instantly, crying softly, "Please don't leave me." And Daniel felt tears burn his own eyes because his late wife used to grip his hand the same way before she died, making him swear he would always help people the way she believed he could. And so he stayed, comforting Leela, asking where her mother was, and the answer shattered him. "She's in heaven. She got sick and said she couldn't stay with me, but she promised someone with a warm voice would find me." And Daniel felt his heart splinter because he didn't understand why her mother had spoken about him, yet everything inside him screamed that this moment wasn't random, it was destiny. The authorities soon discovered Leela had escaped from a temporary foster placement where she had been neglected and emotionally mistreated, and when she heard she might have to return to another temporary house, she clung to Daniel with desperate fear, sobbing into his chest, "I don't want to go back to those people. They said my mom lied, but she didn't. She said you would come." And something inside Daniel snapped, something fierce and unbreakable, the part of him that had once promised his dying wife that he would live a life guided by compassion. He asked if he could take her home for the night under emergency temporary host guidelines, and after paperwork and heated discussions, they agreed. And when he carried her into his home later that evening, his son Ethan ran to him excitedly, only to stop when he saw the girl, and within seconds, the children connected, Leela's fear slowly melting as Ethan offered her hot chocolate and a blanket. Daniel watched them with a tightening throat, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose, warmth, the sense of being exactly where he was meant to be. And as he tucked Leela into the guest room that night, she whispered, "Mom said good people shine in storms, and you shine the brightest." And Daniel walked out of the room with tears streaming down his face, realizing that this story wasn't about rescuing a lost girl. It was about fate returning a piece of his own humanity. And to every viewer watching, if you want to discover the truth behind Leela's mother, the mystery of how she knew Daniel, and the emotional journey that will break your heart and rebuild it, make sure you subscribe right now, because the next chapter reveals a truth so powerful you won't be able to look away. Chapter 2, 1000-word single paragraph. The next morning began not with fear or storms but with the soft sound of laughter drifting from the kitchen, and as Daniel walked in, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Both Ethan and Leela sitting at the table drawing pictures, smiling like the weight of the world had momentarily lifted from their small shoulders, and Daniel felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest as he poured coffee, still haunted by Leela's words about her mother knowing him, determined to uncover the truth. After breakfast, while the children played, he searched old documents, charity records, community outreach projects, anything that could connect him to Leela's mother, and finally, in a folder from 6 years ago, he found her, Clara Torres, a young single mother who had attended a company-sponsored job assistance seminar Daniel had personally hosted during the early days of his foundation, and he remembered her now, a woman with tired eyes but a resilient smile, who had confessed she felt like the world was closing in on her, and Daniel had taken her aside, offering her comforting words he barely remembered now, telling her she wasn't alone, that her daughter deserved a strong, hopeful future, and that kindness could rebuild even the most shattered lives. Staring at her photo, realizing she had remembered those words for years, Daniel felt tears prick at his eyes, especially when he found a note in the file where Clara had written, "This man reminded me that I can still rise," and suddenly everything made sense. Why Leela recognized his voice, why her mother had spoken of him as though he were a guardian angel she wanted her child to trust if anything ever happened to her. Swallowing hard, Daniel walked to the living room where Leela sat hugging a small cardboard box she had kept close since the storm, and in a soft trembling voice she asked, "Can we open it together now?" And when he nodded, she lifted the lid, revealing photographs of Clara, small drawings Leela had made for her mother, and finally, a sealed envelope with Daniel's name written on it in faded ink. His hands shook as he opened it, and inside was a handwritten letter from Clara, explaining that she had been diagnosed with a severe illness, that she was fighting for Leela as long as she could, but if life took her sooner than expected, she wanted her daughter to find the man who once encouraged her to stay strong, the man with the warm eyes and the steady voice, because she believed he would protect Leela if fate ever placed them in each other's path. Clara's writing trembled with love and desperation as she added, "If my daughter ever finds you, please guide her, protect her, and let her know she was loved every second of her life." And when Daniel finished reading, he broke down for the first time in years, tears streaming uncontrollably as Leela hugged him, crying too because she knew the letter meant her mother had trusted him more than any stranger. Within days, social workers visited, evaluating Daniel's home, watching the bond between him and Leela, seeing how she clung to him and how Ethan treated her like a sister he'd always wished for. And though the authorities warned the guardianship process would be long and complicated, something remarkable happened. Leela herself stood before the social worker, saying in a trembling voice, "Please don't take me away from him. My mom picked him for me," and those words carried a power no system could ignore. Weeks passed with interviews, legal forms, home inspections, and emotional assessments, and through it all Daniel never wavered, fighting for Leela like she was his own child, fueled by Clara's last wish and the unmistakable connection that had bloomed between them. And the day of the final hearing arrived with heavy nerves, Daniel holding Leela's hand as he walked into the courtroom, Ethan cheering him on from the front row. The judge reviewed all documents, observed the deep emotional bond, read Clara's letter twice, and finally looked at Daniel with a softened expression before saying, "This child has already found her family. The court grants full guardianship to Mr. Reeves," and the room erupted in emotion as Leela leapt into Daniel's arms, crying tears of joy, whispering, "Mom was right about you," while Ethan hugged them both, completing the circle of their new family. Later that night, as they sat together watching cartoons, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt since his wife died, a sense of completeness, healing, and destiny fulfilled, and he whispered a quiet promise to Leela and Ethan that he would protect them with everything he had. And to every viewer watching, if this story touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that life's storms can lead us to the people we're meant to love, then please subscribe to the channel right now, Because more emotional stories like this are waiting, stories that will inspire, heal, and stay with you long after the screen fades to black.